Learning Printed Material in Foreign Languages, Side 1. Linda is a housewife who believes in keeping her mind active and involved. She has set a goal for herself to be continually learning new things and has found that books are an inexpensive and virtually limitless resource for learning. Only problem with book study is that Linda cannot always remember what she reads. And then there's Rick. Rick is a middle-aged man working for a successful company. Over the last few years, this company has expanded into other countries and has become an international company. Rick could greatly increase his employment opportunities if he could speak a foreign language. He realizes this and has tried and tried to learn a second language, but it just seems impossible. Have you ever read a novel that you really enjoyed and found to be extremely exciting, but 2 days after you finished it, you couldn't remember the main plot or how it ended? Have you ever tried to learn a foreign language? You repeat the words over and over, but they just don't stick in your mind. What you need, along with Linda and Rick, are some memory enhancement techniques. Once again, you will find that mnemonic devices are effective tools for many learning tasks, including printed material and foreign languages. This course will teach you how to use these memory techniques, and if you learn how to properly use these devices and apply them, you'll be able to remember more of what you read, and learning a foreign language will also be easier. Remembering what you read is probably one of the most valuable memory skills you can learn. You absorb much of your information from reading, but if that information is not stored correctly, it will be impossible to remember when you need it. The supermemory system uses mnemonics to help you store, retain, and retrieve information. Using these tools enables you to read, remember, and memorize valuable information. The first memory tool will help you remember what you read. This mnemonic device can be easily thought of as OWL, which stands for outlining, word substitution, and linking. First, you form an outline of the material. Next, you use word substitution to remember key words, and then you link them together. You can use this system to remember a general outline of a paragraph or detailed facts and figures of a sentence. The LOSI system can be used in order to remember the general outline of a chapter. You might recall using the LOSI system to memorize a speech outline. This is much the same idea. All you need to do is link each main point to an object in your LOSI. Then use word substitution to help form images of the main points. After doing this, you should be able to go through your LOSI and recall each main point with ease. If you prefer to use the link system to form an outline, follow the same procedure we just discussed, and then simply link the main points to each other rather than to a LOSI. You may need to be familiar with more information than just a general outline of the topic. Perhaps you need to remember the chapter number, title, and main points of a book. If so, simply use the peg and linking systems. Begin by linking the peg word for the chapter number to the title. Then link the title to the first main point and continue outlining the rest of the chapter. Be sure to picture the images clearly so that they are strong and easy to remember. This method should help you remember the general format of the material you are reading, as well as the chapter it can be found in. If you're interested in even more detailed information, you can move to a smaller scale and link the ideas in each paragraph together. Once again, you will be using OWL, outlining, word substitution, and linking in order to connect the main points of the paragraph. If there are numbers in the information, substitute the numbers with objects by using one of the peg systems. Word substitution can also be used to help form mental images of words that are abstract or difficult to picture. For example, Zambia might be associated to zombie. The OWL method can also be used in order to remember the main thoughts from each individual sentence. Begin by forming an outline of the main ideas, then use word substitution to form mental images of those ideas, and finally, link those images together. It's important to remember to form clear images and review your links periodically so they are retained properly in your memory. It's a good idea to review the next day and then the following week. Your reading rate may slow down a little when you first begin using these techniques, but as you get used to forming links, your reading pace will soon return to its normal speed. Using mnemonics to remember what you read will save you a great deal of time. You will not need to reread and review the information time and time again. You will only need to read it once, and you will find that the information is easy to recall. Memorizing written information has traditionally required long, tedious hours of continuous repetition. Many times you memorize over and over, and yet nothing seems to stick. You seem to be getting nowhere because your brain is not retaining any of it. By combining this rote memorization with a few simple mnemonic techniques, this tiresome memorizing process suddenly becomes easier and more effective. Suppose you need to memorize an entire paragraph from a novel. Begin by reading the paragraph. Read it carefully and be sure you understand the information. You would then begin memorizing it by forming a mental image of its meaning. This will help you remember the paragraph because it is pictured in your mind. After visualizing the general idea of the paragraph, begin forming a mental image of each particular sentence. Now that you have a general idea of the paragraph and each individual sentence, and they are pictured in your mind, it is time to apply our old friend, the OWL method. Pick out the key words from the first sentence. If they are abstract, use word substitution to help form concrete images in your mind. Now link the key words together. After you have formed a mental image of the sentence and have linked the key words to one another, it is time to review those links. Go over the links a few times until you become very familiar with them and they're easy to picture. Once you are able to remember the key words without difficulty, try adding the filler words of the sentence to the key words. At this point, it is necessary to begin using rote memorization. Repeat the entire sentence over and over until you have memorized the entire sentence. Although you are now using the boring old method of rote memorization, you have included mnemonic links, which will make the memorization process easier and faster. After the first sentence is memorized, go on to the next sentence and repeat the same procedure. Once the second sentence is memorized, review the first sentence and repeat it with the second sentence. Follow this procedure till you have the entire paragraph memorized. You'll be surprised at how quickly this is achieved and how concrete the image is in your mind. Let's try memorizing a few lines from Wordsworth's Ode on Intimations of Immortality. It goes as follows. Though nothing can bring back the hour of splendor in the grass, of glory in the flower, we will grieve not, rather find strength in what remains behind. To begin, we need to come up with an outline or a general idea of what Wordsworth is saying. The hour he is speaking of is our youth, and the grass and flower are symbols of that freshness that characterizes youth. He suggests that instead of looking back on those days and finding sorrow as we compare it to our present state, we need to look back on those days and find joy and strength in the memories. Look back on youth and find pleasure in it. Now that we have a general understanding of the passage, we need to come up with a few key words. Although you can use more than one key word for each line, it's easier to use just one. So for our first line, though nothing can bring back the hour, we will use hour. You could use nothing as the key word, but just make sure that you pick a key word you can visualize. Begin by picturing a huge clock that only has an hour hand. For the next line, of splendor in the grass, of glory in the flower, let's use grass and flower as our key words. So we could link the images by picturing the huge clock with only an hour hand lying in a field of green grass and bright yellow flowers. For we will grieve not, rather find, we could use grieve as the key word. However, since grieve is not an object, let's substitute grave. Now, you can imagine that you see a big clump of flowers, and when you walk over to it, you find that it's at the head of an open grave. Finally, there's the last line, strength in what remains behind. Since strength is the most important word in the line, this would be a good choice for the key word. Unfortunately, the word strength is not only abstract, it's difficult to find a substitute for. As a solution, you could choose to use the word behind instead. But let's go ahead and try to use the word strength. To represent strength, we could picture a set of barbells. Then you can imagine that when you look down into the grave, all you see is a pile of barbells. Turn the tape over now, and we'll put the entire image together. Learning Printed Material in Foreign Languages, Side 2. Now let's put the entire image together. We have a huge clock with only an hour hand lying on a field of grass and flowers. Then you see a big clump of flowers. When you walk over it, you discover that it's the head of an open grave. You look into the grave and see a pile of barbells. Now just go over the story we created and see if you can pick out the key words. They were hour, grass, flower, grieve, and strength. Now that you can remember the key words of the quote, you can easily fill in the rest with rote memorization. Notice that although it's often very easy to come up with key words that are easy to link, sometimes it's very difficult, like with the word strength. However, by putting your imagination to work, you can overcome any mnemonic obstacle. Sometimes it's necessary to memorize numbers in a text, such as page numbers, chapters, verses, and acts and scenes in plays. Memorizing all this, as well as the text, seems nearly impossible. Once again, mnemonics creates an easy way to associate numbers and the text. To begin, select a key word from the quotation or scripture, which will remind you of the main idea. Next, link the numbers that identify the location of the quote to the key word. For a scriptural reference, link the book, chapter, and verse to the key word. You can easily do this by using one of the PEG systems from the Supermemory course to create your links. After you have formed the links in your mind, you will be able to remember the subject of the quote or scripture as well as its location. If you wish to memorize the quote or scripture, follow the method we discussed earlier. If you are really ambitious, you can use this technique to remember the contents of an entire magazine. Just think how impressive this would be at a social gathering. This may sound overwhelming, but it is actually very simple. All you need to do is simply link the PEG word for the page number to a key word from the story. If there's more than one article on the page, link them together in order of their location on the page. Sounds easy, doesn't it? Well, that's because it is. Be sure to establish a specific pattern and follow the same direction every time you're linking more than one article on a specific page. Try going clockwise. That would be a safe pattern to follow. In today's world of modern technology, transportation, and communication, people are coming in contact more and more with speakers of a foreign language. So knowledge of a foreign language is becoming a valuable skill to possess. Yet this skill is not easily acquired, and too often people give up before they've learned the language. Mnemonics will make this learning task easier and more enjoyable. Oftentimes, the most tedious and frustrating part of learning a language is conquering the vocabulary. Mnemonic tools will help you master this task, which is a major part of the process. Once you're familiar with the vocabulary, the grammar, spelling, and conjugation will come easier because you won't have to spend your time trying to figure out the meaning of each specific word. Instead, you'll be able to spend your time mastering these other aspects of the language. Word substitution is the main mnemonic tool used in learning foreign language vocabulary. Simply find a word in English which sounds similar to the foreign word. Then link that word to the English definition of the foreign word. When you hear the word, the image you depicted will immediately remind you of what the word means. After listening to just a few examples, you will already have a head start on learning your foreign language. Let's begin with some French words. The French word for pen is stylo. In order to remember this, imagine a huge pen stealing lots of tiny O's. Beau is a masculine French word for gorgeous. This is one word you will want to remember. So picture a very handsome man wearing nothing but a bow tie. Ami means friend. You might associate this word to the phrase, Amy is my friend. Here are a few beginning vocabulary words if you're interested in Spanish. The Spanish word for sleep is dormir. You could picture yourself sleeping on a dorm with a giant ear. Vaso is Spanish for glass. For this word, you might imagine yourself throwing a lasso around a glass and pulling it toward you. And if you happen to be curious about German, try these words. Prüfung means test. Remember this word by thinking that you can prove you are young by taking a test. Krank is German for sick. This is an easy one. Just remember that a sick person is definitely cranky. In just a matter of minutes, you have already memorized 7 foreign words. Suddenly, learning a foreign language doesn't seem so impossible after all. Use your imagination to come up with your own word associations as you learn a new language. Once you have memorized a large portion of the vocabulary, it's time to learn another important aspect of a foreign language, the verb conjugations. This is going to take some rote memorization, but once you get started, these conjugations will be easy to form and use. There are 6 tenses in each verb conjugation: first person, second person, third person, singular, first person plural, second person plural, and third person plural. In order to remember these tenses, you will need to use your imagination again. Picture them in your brain in 2 columns, a column for the singular verbs and another for the plural verbs. Then place the ending for all 6 tenses in each column. Begin with first person singular, followed by second and third person singular. Then move on to first, second, and third person plural. Now when you come upon a verb that needs to be conjugated, all you need to do is picture these columns in your mind and quickly find the right verb ending. It's like playing Hollywood Squares, only instead of finding celebrities, the boxes are filled with verb endings. For example, Spanish verbs ending in AR would be set up like this. First person singular is conjugated by an O, second person singular by an AS, and third person singular by an A. In the next column, first person plural is conjugated by an AMOS, second person plural by an AIS, and third person plural by an AN. Using rote memorization, go over these conjugations until you have them completely memorized. Say to yourself, O, AS, A, AMOS, AIS, AN. And remember to picture the 2 columns in your mind and imagine the 6 endings in each box. Each week, Hollywood Squares changes celebrities. You will find that as you progress in your new language, you will also have to make some changes. You won't need to replace the old verb endings. You will merely need to form new verb boxes. For each tense, past, present, future, conditional, imperfect, and so on, you will need to set up the endings in your mind and picture the boxes. Then as you need to use them, picture the columns in your mind and choose the conjugation you need. This will become easier with time. Use the word substitution to help you memorize entire phrases as well as vocabulary words. And once you have conquered the majority of the vocabulary, move on to the verb conjugations, setting up the boxes in your mind. As you begin to speak the language, the vocabulary will come easily, and you can use the pictures in your mind to conjugate the verbs. Having conquered both the vocabulary and verb conjugation, you should find it easy and fun to speak your new language. The more you build on your second language, the easier it becomes, and the more you know, the more exciting it is to speak it. At first, these mnemonic techniques will seem ridiculous and absurd. The images that have been described may seem absolutely bizarre, and you may not be able to grasp their meaning when you first imagine them. But with practice, it becomes easier, and the images begin to flow. Just remember, it is easier when you use your own images because they are clearer and more familiar. Use these mnemonic devices to learn 1 or even 2 foreign languages. Use them to memorize passages or impressive quotes. With these techniques, this will no longer seem impossible. Mnemonics will help you improve your reading and learning skills, and soon you will enjoy memorizing things rather than dread it.